So I've had a look at the front brake light switch, which turned out to have a wire hanging off. So in here I've reattached that wire to the connector, but you can see that if I put the rear brake light switch on, so that's on the rear brake, that goes on and off, but the front does not, even though you can hear the switch clicking. That doesn't work. So I was a bit, oh dear, I've reconnected the wire and it's still not working, so what's the problem? So I took off the connectors, got my multimeter out, and had a go at checking the switch. So I'll do that now. There's a multimeter here. Go in there, put the, find them, put the, it's tricky this, put the connections on here, so it's there and there. I can manage it. So that's one, that's the other one. So if I push the switch in, the switch is working. So I thought, well, has to be the wiring loom, which is not good. I don't want to wander off down through the wiring loom. But then I tried the old pair of pliers trick of sticking pliers into the connections, and you can see that the rear light comes on and off. So as far as I can tell, the wiring is fine and the switch is actually gone. It's just that it shows up as working with a multimeter, but not when you actually put the 12 volts through, which is a bit odd. So I'm now going to measure the on resistance of the switch and see what that is. I've ordered a new switch, they're not particularly expensive, so we'll see whether that fixes the problem. So when it goes on, we're looking at, well, it's flicking round a lot, about 1.5 ohms, so that doesn't make sense, or 2k depending on what you take as the reading. It's pretty erratic, so we'll try a new switch in there, I think. So this is a different measurement. I've now got the wires attached to the switch, got some crocodile leads running out, so I can now measure the voltage across the switch when I operate it. So with the lever released, 11.7 volts, we'll call that 12 volts. Pull the lever in, it just drops to 11.6. So that switch is definitely not working. I think it's probably worth trying to measure the resistance of the contacts. So I'll give that a go. So I've attached my multimeter with some crocodile clips onto the switch just to see what's going on, and when I hold the brake lever in I get about a couple of ohms, which is enough to trigger the continuity function of the meter, but doesn't seem to be enough to actually turn the rear brake light on. So yeah. I've put a new switch in, wasn't too difficult, just held in with one screw, and it works. So there's definitely something wrong with the original switch. I mean, that is pretty reliable. And that's the original unit. So don't really know what was up with that. It seems to be closed, I think, when it's in the not braking position, and then it opens when you apply the brake. So maybe that's just in the, well, when the light's on, that's in the direction that's just held with a spring rather than any sort of pressure from the lever. So maybe it's something to do with that, but maybe we'll have a look. Here's the switch with the top taken off, and when the brake lever is not pulled in, it's like that. It's actually pressing in on the button on the switch, which means the contacts are open. And then when you pull the switch in, it opens, makes contact. So if I put the meter on the continuity setting, definitely reading that there's continuity when those contacts are closed. But that doesn't drive the bulb, so put it back on ohms, and that's 1.5. It's actually fairly erratic, but there is a wiping action on the contacts as well. When you start to operate it, it swipes and sweeps the two contacts, so that should keep it clear of any sort of corrosion. I would have thought the more you operate it, the better. But it is pretty erratic, and it does go up to about 2 ohms. Oop, what's going on there? That's not working anymore. Something's fallen out. The button is fallen out. So there's no half operated position. There's 2 states it can be in. Now that's interesting. So that's 400 ohms, and I let go down to about 3.5 now, so it looks like the contacts are just worn, I think. So I might take those out and have a look. Probably won't be using this switch again. Can we get that contact out? Yeah, it just comes out. So that's what it looks like. Yeah, looks pretty gnarly. And the other one's probably the same. I think that just comes out. Yeah, so the whole assembly comes out. What's that look like? Yeah, not brilliant. I could maybe clean those up, but I've got a new switch in there, so I've got a possible refurbishable spare here. Let's put that all back together again. And the case wasn't actually welded shut, it was just clipped together, so there's no damage to the case really. Getting it out. Is that going to go in there? Come on, matey. Let's see if I can find something to sort those contacts out. I think that needs to be moved out of the way while it goes in. Yep. And put the button back in, and it's working again. So yeah, just worn out, I think. That's probably 20 years of turning the brake light on and off. Done for it. So yeah, nothing massively wrong with it. Oop, button's jumped out again, does that quite a lot. Let's put it back in.